Typically on this channel, I like to share good advice with fellow professional wrestlers, but today, bad advice. I'm Mike Quackenbush, and this is Till We Make It. Throughout my career, I've been very fortunate. I've worked in front of the cameras as a pro wrestler, a referee, a ring announcer, and a commentator. And I've worked behind the scenes too as a promoter, a booker, an agent, a coach, and a consultant. And I share the fruit of my experience right here on the Till We Make It YouTube channel. And I go even deeper into pro wrestling philosophy, theory, culture, and I share a lot of my personal experiences over on the Till We Make It Patreon. It's my loyal patrons that make all of this possible. And if you want to join our community and get access to hundreds of exclusives, well, just follow the link down below in the descriptus. Today's video follows neatly on the heels of Wednesday's video, in which I shared veteran advice I wish I had heard when I was much younger. And of course, going back through my mental Rolodex and examining all of those files also called to mind some veteran wisdom I wish I hadn't heard, some of which has become obsolete over time, some of which was bad the moment I heard it. So yes, today we're going over some bad wrestling advice. And of course I'm going to break each of these down as we go, but I'll start with one which has always stayed with me, which is, in wrestling, you work hurt and you work injured, or you don't work at all. This old adage, I understand, comes from a previous generation when the attitude toward being injured was quite different. For example, our understanding of concussions, a type of brain injury, is so much more robust and developed now than it was 15, 30, 45 years ago, that now understanding the severity of concussions has completely transformed our approach to that type of injury. And while I agree with the notion that to a degree all wrestlers work hurt, because if you do this job for any amount of time, your body is going to hurt, you don't have to work injured out of fear that your job will go away. You can take the time to recover and recuperate, and people are more understanding of that now than they have ever been in the history of professional wrestling. Beyond which, if you go out there injured to the point that you could not possibly be at 100%, you run the risk of injuring the person that you're in the ring with and making your own injury even worse. And then that just snowballs right down the mountain into nothing good. A second popular piece of so-called veteran wisdom we could probably all do without is this one, and I'm betting you've heard a version of this at some point. It's that the best wrestling character you can portray is just you, but turned up to 11. And this might work for some extroverts, but it is a one-size-fits-all solution to something that is not one size. It is very difficult to apply that as a rule or guideline to every personality type that is attracted to professional wrestling. And I think it is especially unhelpful to introverts who need to portray a character that is not at all them, so that degree of anonymity allows them the freedom to perform to their fullest. I have taught people exactly like that, who need to inhabit a character nothing like themselves, because that dissociation is liberating enough that it allows their inner performer to blossom. And it has nothing to do with taking their own personality and turning it up to 11, and everything to do with taking on a personality which they know is not a reflection of themselves. Especially in the case of introverts. The tenet of the best wrestling character you can portray is just you turned up to 11 is actually incredibly counterproductive. You may know that for an overly long period of time, I was the NWA World Junior Heavyweight Champion. I'm coming for you, Danny Hodge. And back when I had that title belt, no single word better characterized the National Wrestling Alliance than disorganization. There were way too many chefs in that kitchen. And take it from a guy who was there back in the day, the best thing that's happened to the NWA in the last 25 or 30 years is that they got hired by the Smashing Pumpkins. Siamese dream. Chef's kiss emoji, so hard on that one. The point I'm trying to get to is this. Once, when I was NWA World Junior Heavyweight Champion, a promoter really said this to me. He said, every wrestling show should have at least one match with no psychology to it. Now, maybe, just maybe this guy meant without a structure to it. But the idea that you would have a wrestling match with no psychology to it, no underlying narrative, no storytelling to it whatsoever, I think is nonsense. At the very least, every match has to have some underlying idea to it, that this is a story of strength against speed, or my only objective is to break down your leg until I can get you to submit to whatever my finishing move is. The idea that there would be no psychology whatsoever behind a wrestling match, I think, is setting up two people to put a car wreck in the ring. And even if that is amusing, I don't know if that is the best use of stage time in front of an audience of people who have paid you their hard-earned money to be there. A sage piece of wrestling wisdom left over from the territory era of professional wrestling is this one, which got repeated often during the cable TV era. It's that the crowd doesn't control you. You control the crowd. And while this is not without certain merits, what is absent from that is this undeniable truth. You can only apply that adage, the crowd doesn't control you, you control the crowd, if you're already over and or you are able to command the stage. But if your character isn't over yet and you aren't able to command the stage, this is bad advice. If anything, you are courting the crowd until the point that you are over. Then, of course, you can help get somebody else over. You can create matches which are over. But until that happens, it is not true to say that the crowd doesn't control you, you control the crowd. It's actually the exact opposite. You have to give the crowd what they want, what they expect for their ticket buy, if you want that measure of good faith from the audience. And eventually, you will get over. Eventually, you will be charismatic and or confident enough to command the stage. But until that moment, that adage is utterly irrelevant. If you know how to craft it, eventually, yes, you can take the audience on a ride of your design. And you better believe, despite what I was told by a promoter of the NWA, there has to be a structure, a psychology underneath it, serving as its narrative backbone. And if you want to entertain modern audiences, you've got to be able to conquer those challenges. That's why I wrote Toolbox, Building Better Pro Wrestling. It's all about that structural piece of wrestling. And if you need it, grab it from Amazon or Audible right now. Big thanks to my patrons who make all of this possible. So thanks, Alex. Thanks, MJ. Thanks, Nicholas.